The 2011 thick boy iMac is actually one of the last iMacs to really be easily repairable. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to walk you through how to replace the power supply in the iMac. Now you can use the beginning parts of this to just get in and muck around by replacing the hard drive or RAM or whatever you want to do. I'm just replacing the power supply in this one because that's what was broken on it anyway. Let's take a look at how we do this. So the first step of the process is gathering a couple of suction cups, sticking them to the top two corners of the screen, and then just pulling up on the screen gently until the magnet lets go of the screen. It comes off actually pretty easily. Now you're gonna wanna be really careful. This is really the one part where you can kind of screw things up. You just wanna be really careful not to break this screen. It's pretty fragile, it's just the piece of glass. Set it somewhere where you're not gonna break it, that kind of thing. Once you have the glass off, you're gonna notice around the edge of the screen there's going to be 8 T10 screws. So you're gonna need a pretty specialized screwdriver for this. You can usually find sets in any normal hardware store nowadays. Torx head screwdrivers used to be a lot harder to find. They're not that hard to find anymore. So you're gonna need a T10 screwdriver for this, and then all you're gonna wanna do is just pull the screws out and be really careful. The only real trick here is the fact that the magnets on the side of the screen actually like to just grab onto screws. So you're just gonna wanna have a pair of tweezers or something handy so you can grab the screws out of the hole. So taking the screen out of the iMac, this isn't much of a problem, but as you'll see later on, putting the screen back in, the magnets make it a little more difficult, but we'll show that when we get there. But yeah, just unscrew, you know, guys, you know how to unscrew screws. It's real simple. They're the only ones you can really see around the screen. Again, this is actually a pretty easy install, so we'll just skip past this. Now, once you have all the screws out of the way, what you're gonna wanna do is just very gently, and you wanna make sure you're really careful about this because you don't wanna break the actual display. But you're gonna just wanna find something just to pry up the corner of the screen and lift it up really, really gently. So here's where you really wanna be careful because there's actually cables and stuff connected to the screen, and if you lift the screen up too high, too fast, you might end up breaking something. So just be really careful, and once you get it up enough, you can get your hands in there or maybe even a spudger or something and just get those cables out. The cables can be very delicate, so don't pull too hard on them. If they don't give right away, that means you're doing something wrong. So just take your time with this part. You don't want to break anything, and just make sure, that you're just removing the cables. So there's 4 different cables that you have to remove, and I'll show them here in a video of some sort. And just make sure that you get them all before you lift the display out. Once you have all those cables removed, you can very gently and easily remove the display from the iMac. Now again, be very careful with the display, especially since it doesn't have the glass protective layer on it. You just wanna make sure that you lift it gently and you put it somewhere safe where it's not gonna get scratched or broken. It's pretty obvious stuff I'm saying here, but it is worth saying, even if it is pretty obvious, it is worth saying that just be very gentle with your display. The displays in these iMacs are pretty good, and you don't want to go wrecking it and having to replace something else. And here's one thing too, once the iMac is open, especially one from like 2011 or earlier, you're gonna notice that this thing is dusty as heck. Now, it's not a point of shame, there's no shame in having a dusty iMac because this is probably the first time you busted it open. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you have a can of compressed air just to blow it all out and clean it up. You might even notice a slight performance bump just by dusting this thing out because it's probably caked in it over the years. And really just take the opportunity to do a really good cleaning job. You're not gonna open this thing up very often. So taking that chance when you get it is prime. Okay, now we get to the power supply itself. Here is your warning. These things can be and are dangerous. These things are absolutely dangerous, and you have to handle them with care. What I do recommend is making sure that the iMac has been unplugged for a couple of days. That doesn't reduce the danger to nothing. A lot of the capacitors in these power supplies can hold power for weeks, months, even years sometimes. So you just want to take all the precautions necessary. When you're handling it, you just want to handle it from the sides of the board. You never want to touch anything on the top or bottom of the power supply. Just take every precaution you can to be safe and to make sure that you're not getting electrocuted yourself. This is the point where I tell you, if you really don't feel comfortable doing this, get somebody who is comfortable to do it for you. I know I've said that doing repairs like this is simple, but it is dangerous, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to keep yourself safe. So once again, we're going to be using the same T10 Torx screwdriver that we used to get into here to unscrew the 4 screws from the power supply. Now, all of these screws are actually different sizes, so you're going to want to make sure you know where you took them from so you can put them back in the proper order, in the proper place. It's real simple though. Just remove these 4 screws, and then what you're gonna wanna do is make sure that you unplug the 2 power cables from the power supply. Not just one, there are 2. So there's gonna be one right about here. This one's pretty easy to take out, so you just undo that. And then the main power, it'll take a little bit to get out. Don't force it, just gently wedge it out. You'll eventually get it out. It's actually pretty easy. Don't get too forceful with it. Just like anything else with computers, don't get too forceful with it or you're gonna break something, but just pull it out. It's not a problem. And then once you get this power supply out, all you gotta do is do the whole thing in reverse. So once you have the old power supply out of the case, and again, being very careful not to touch the components of the power supply itself, you wanna make sure that you have your new one. This one has been ordered from iFixit. They have a really great website for ordering old parts for old systems. So it works really well. So basically, it's all about just reversing everything that we just did before. So you want to slap that new one in. Again, make sure you're dusting everything as you go so you have the cleanest system possible. It's basically just doing everything in reverse. So let's just quickly go through this. And again, remembering the order of all the screws, the placement of all the screws, it's really that easy. That's really everything there is to do this. So why don't we just cut to a montage of putting this thing back together again. Okay, so a quick note. So once again, the screws when putting the screen back in, they're gonna get caught by that stupid magnet. It's just gonna be a thing. To have some patience with it. What I ended up doing was using my tweezers and my screwdriver to just kind of nudge them into the right spot. It's a bit of a hassle. Don't worry about it. One of the things you're gonna wanna do though is make sure that you clean the screen before you put the glass on. Clean the screen, clean the glass, just so you're making sure that no dust is getting caught between the screen and the glass, because that's just gonna be annoying if you see it. So maybe have a microfiber cloth on standby. You're just gonna wanna make sure that that's particularly clean, especially with all the dusting you've done. There's gonna be dust everywhere, so just make sure that's a priority to keep that clean. And if everything worked out, you'll see the wonderful apple of joy. Wait for it. One of the things I would actually look into while you're going to be doing this is potentially upgrading some of the components in your computer. Now this one has a upgraded RAM and everything like that, so it's really good, but the boot time is really slow because it's still running an old hard drive. Now, if I were to replace this hard drive with something like an SSD, it would feel like a brand new machine. It would feel really, really awesome and give the system a whole new life. But anyway, that is how you replace a power supply in an old school iMac. Anyway, thank you guys for being here and being awesome. I made another video, you know, once every few decades seems like my kind of jam. Anyway, thank you guys for being here and being awesome. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know in the comments what you want to see me do next. I like making these tutorials because they're the only thing people watch on here. So anyway, peace.